Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thanks for being here. The executive producer of the show, Huck, is here. She's on site, she's supervising, and I just want you to be aware that this is Huck TV. Yes, the brilliant Huck. And she will be managing the show, giving us side-eye like she's doing right now. She's in a good mood today, and she's getting her winter coat in. Pyrenees have two coats, so they get really thick. She's going to take a nap. She's almost asleep, and so we will move on. And during this holiday season, I thank you for being here. It's a deep honor to have the audience I have, and each of you, I could give you a hug, I would. You're appreciated. And I know firsthand the holidays are tough times. And sitting around by yourself, sometimes your head plays games with you. Don't let it. Don't let it. You are here for a reason. Maybe you haven't figured out what that reason is, but you're here. And we're here together to solve one of life's great mysteries. And as I've stated before, think about a big wagon wheel. And there's spokes in that wagon wheel. How many spokes are there on a wagon wheel? I'm sure that there's many in some of the very heavy wagons. Some of the lighter wagons may not have a lot. But I consider an investigation spokes in a wheel. And somebody, one of you guys, ladies, sent me this about a spoke in the wheel. And this was in Wired magazine way back in 1980. It was an article. I'm going to read it to you. The title is Military Investigates Amnesia Beams. A team of scientists from the United States and China announced last week that for the first time they'd found a means of selectively and safely erasing memories in mice using the signaling molecule CAMKII. It's a big step forward and one that will be of considerable interest to the military, which has a team of scientists in China looking at this. It's a big step forward and one that will be considerably used, which has devoted efforts to memory manipulation as a means of treating post-traumatic stress disorder. But some military research has moved in another direction entirely. In the 1980s, researchers found that even low-level exposure to a beam of electron-caused rats. Read that again. Low-level exposure to a beam of electrons caused rats to forget what had just happened to them, an effect known as retrograde amnesia. The other version, anti-retrograde amnesia, is when you can't form new memories. The same effect was also achieved with X-rays. The time factor was not large, it only caused memory loss about the previous 4 seconds, but the effect was intriguing. One theory was that amnesia was the result of a brilliant flash experienced when the electron beam struck the retina. And indeed, it turned out that it is possible to produce amnesia in rodents using a flash of light. Interesting, huh? This might explain some of the disorienting effects of strobe lights used as non-lethal weapons, but there seems to have been little further research on this. You know, you think about abductees, and they talk about a flash of light, often. However, there have been plenty of studies on the physical effects of radio and microwave exposure to the brain. Many of those investigations have been conducted by the military. The Air Force Research Laboratory's Human Effectiveness Directorate has carried out its own experiments in this area, which did not confirm the results of earlier studies suggesting that microwaves could cause memory loss. The report is now removed from the AFRL website. Most scientists chalk up such effects to heating, but the Directed Energy Bioeffects Division continues to research the human effects of various forms of radiation. What's more, a 2003 paper on microwave effects on the nervous system from a team that includes Navy and Air Force scientists states that, quote, research with isolated brain tissue has provided new results that do not seem to rely on thermal mechanisms. It's hard to assess the real effect on working memory and other brain functions, they add. Still, it's interesting to see the notes for a classified course run by Directed Energy Professional Society, parentheses, the people who build laser or microwave weapons, that include memory loss as a potential effect of such devices. I doubt whether they are a functioning Men in Black style neutralizer, but as memory research continues to advance, it certainly starts to look more like a possibility. I find this fascinating because different types of waves have different types of effects on our body. They talk about microwaves, directed energy weapons. Some ships, a lot of people don't know this, some ships at sea have big devices on the side of their ships. What they are is directed energy weapons. And let's say some pirates try to board a vessel, they can point this at that boat, and when it hits you, it feels super hot, and you got to get out of there. It is a weapon that's being used today. So now, I've wasted a little bit of your time, and I'm sorry, but these are the little things in life that can turn us around. And again, it's one of you that sent me that article, so I appreciate that. First case. Fascinating. The man's name was Milton See, 35 years old, went missing March 11th, 1928. His hometown was Mount Vernon, New York. He was a brilliant man. He was a chemical engineer, hired and working for several years for Standard Oil. Everyone considered him borderline brilliant. And he had been assigned by Standard Oil to work in Asia for several years. And just within the last couple years, he had requested a transfer back to the States, and he got it. He was also a World War veteran, and he still had a lot of friends that he kept in contact with during the war. Well, after he got back from Asia, he asked for several months off from Standard Oil, and they gave it to him. Well, in January 1928, he traveled from Mount Vernon to New Orleans because he wanted to experience Mardi Gras. And he wanted to just dive into the Louisiana lifestyle and see what it was like for a couple months. So he stayed in a hotel, had fun, enjoyed it. Talked to his mom regularly. Well, in March 11th, 1928, Milton had gotten a call from Standard Oil that he needed to take a business trip to Cincinnati. So he arranged to board the train on March 11th in New Orleans for Cincinnati. He never arrived. Standard Oil contacted his home, where his mother and brother also lived, and they stated that they hadn't heard from him. They tried to reach him back at his hotel. They said he checked out. He was going to Cincinnati. They didn't have the new hotel. They were lost. So they contacted the New Orleans police, and they asked them to check into the truth about what happened to Milton. So the police go and they check out the hotel, and they confirm that he did check out like everybody thought. He took all of his luggage, told the people that he was going to Cincinnati, and he got a ride to the train station. That's where everything goes askew. A lot of rumors about what might have happened, but nobody knew the facts. The police hadn't gotten any call of a body in the area. The morgue hadn't turned up anyone. There was nobody in the hospital, etc., etc. You kind of get the drift. So that was March. Well, the family still put out a nationwide search for Milton. Then it was late August the same year, 1928, and Milton said he woke up in a lumber mill next to the Mississippi River, not far from New Orleans. He said he had a bad case of malaria and he needed assistance. He didn't have any money, just a few coins that he said I must have earned him, I don't remember. But he got a ride to Memphis to get help. And he went to the general hospital there for medical assistance, and he was refused because he wasn't a local resident. Found his way to the Salvation Army, and they gave him a bed for the night. I've stated this before. Salvation Army, great people, great organization. When I was a policeman, I worked around them regularly. They always did the right thing. Always. So I can't say enough great things about them. Well, after that night at the Salvation Army, he talked to them about where he might get some help. And they said, well, you need to find another hospital in town, and the only other one besides Memphis General is the Baptist Hospital in Memphis. And they explained how to get there, and he went there. And he said at about this time, he started to remember some things. And he said he remembered waking up in the lumber yard next to the Mississippi River. But that's the earliest memory he had at that point. And then when he got to the hospital, he remembered his best friend in the military, who he talked to all the time. And his friend's name was John Waddell. And he calls John, who lived in that part of the U.S. And he says, I need help. I'm in this hospital, blah, blah, blah. John says, no problem, I'll get there. And within a couple days, he was there. And he described Milton as very thin, gaunt, pale, very sick, but he recognized him. And he also knew that his family had been looking for him for several months. And so he called them in Mount Vernon and explained where he was and who he was with. When John was talking to him, Milton said things started to come back to him. He says, I remember being in New Orleans, having fun, having a significant amount of cash, wearing my gold watch. But he goes, my cash is gone, my watch is gone, and I'm not injured other than I have malaria. And I don't remember anything. Well, the hospital did a full workup on him. They didn't find any serious injuries to him other than the malaria. Milton's brother, a man named Edmund, was told by the mom to go down there and bring the brother back. And Edmund said, hey, no problem, I'm en route, I'm going to go do this right now. So he takes off, goes down there, and he sees Milton, and he sees the same thing. Very skinny, sickly, pale, but on the mend by now because it had been several days. So Edmund brings him back to Mount Vernon, and he starts to heal. About a month after he's in town, Milton had a former fiancée. They were going to get married, and then it was called off, but they were always on good terms. Well, the pair decided to get married again, The fiance nursed him back to health, and everything's rosy. Now here's what I want to show you. So here's where Milton was at. He was in New Orleans, and he ends up in Memphis, Tennessee, about 395 miles. And in this general area, the Mississippi River. So how did he get from here to here? How did he get from here to the lumber mill? And who hired him at the lumber mill? And then I want you to think about this. If you remember back to the Amnesia cases, do you remember how many of those occurred in or around Louisiana? Now, Milton had an unusual last name, See. He was highly intellectual. And this is in that time frame where a whole bunch of amnesia cases were happening across the U.S. March 11th, 1928. Now, another thing that we haven't talked about much, and we just never do, is missing women. People always ask me, Dave, how come you don't have a lot of missing women? Well, here you go. We've got one. This lady's name was Margaret Reeves. Unknown age. She went missing May 23rd, 1927. Almost a year before Milton. Now, Margaret was a resident of Denver, Colorado, married to George Reeves. She had long planned a trip to visit relatives in Arizona, specifically a lady named Catherine Wing, who lived in Cushion, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix on the west side. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment trip. This was long planned, and she was going to take the train from Denver to Phoenix. Now, if you've never been to downtown Denver train station, it's something you got to do. It's quite the building. And they have trains leaving there for all parts of the USA. I've been there several times. Only go there during the daytime today, though. Don't go there at night. Downtown Denver is sketchy at night these days. So, on May 23rd, Margaret gets on the train in Denver and takes off to Phoenix. Relatives waiting in Phoenix. She never arrives. And the relatives and George contact Phoenix police and contact the local sheriff. Now, they couldn't determine where Margaret may have gotten off the train or where she might have gone. She had limited resources. She had luggage, but she didn't know the area. Margaret was known as a very calm, smart woman in excellent health with no complications. Well, the relatives in Phoenix notified all the law enforcement agencies. They start to search. They're not finding anything. George says, I better get down there. He gets down there. They start searching train stations, hotels, Salvation Army, etc., all looking for a place where maybe Margaret had left. But it didn't make any sense because Margaret was not somebody that would just randomly take off. Not in her genes. Never done it before. Now, just so everyone knows, February of next year, I'm going to be giving a talk at MUFON Phoenix. These talks always sell out. Get your tickets right now. Go to Phoenix MUFON, you'll find it. I guarantee you're going to want to be there. It's a great facility, great people. This is my 4th time talking there. It'll be memorable. So back to Phoenix. June 2nd, 1927. 10 days after Margaret disappeared, several Mexican women are in a heavily wooded area 4 miles south of Flagstaff, Arizona. Yeah. The Mexican women were working in this area, and they flagged down a Coconino County deputy, and they report a crazy white woman darting through the woods. The woman was described as small, short, barefoot, stockings wrapped around her feet, and a left foot that appeared to be injured or burnt. They said, this woman needs help. So the deputy says, okay. So the deputy searches the area for several hours and eventually finds this woman deep in the woods. She walks over to him. Deputy said that she didn't look well. And she stated right away that she hadn't ate anything or drank anything in 4 days. Now, she's very lucky she was alive. You don't drink for 3 days and you're going to be near death. 4 days, especially in May in Flagstaff, she's lucky she's alive. Well, the deputy starts to talk to her. How'd you get here? Who are you? Where are you from? How are you surviving? All the questions that I would ask. She said her name was Margaret Reeves from Denver. The deputy says, well, what are you doing here? She goes, I don't know. He goes, what do you mean you don't know? She said that she was on a train from Denver to Phoenix, and all of a sudden she found herself in the woods. Here. She says, I don't know anyone here. I don't know how to get out of here. I don't remember disembarking the train or walking into the woods. Just stop for a second. Can you imagine how scared that feeling would be in your soul? First of all, total lack of control over your life. Boom, you're on the train 1 minute, next minute you're in the woods, you don't even know where you're at. No shoes? Where are you? And she had no idea how she burned or injured her left foot. Well, the deputy realized that this poor lady is in really bad shape. So he takes her to the county hospital for treatment. During the time riding in the car, she says to the deputy, my husband's George Reeves. He's in Denver. I'm sure he's really afraid, and I hope somebody can contact him. Deputy goes, yeah, I'll make that contact. And she gets treated at the hospital. The deputy was able to contact George, and George arranged transportation back down there to get her. A couple of things about this that immediately boing into my head. So this is Flagstaff. This is kind of a high elevation area for Arizona. During the winter months, it snows pretty good there. Phoenix is south. Now, does anybody know what that is? Anybody know? Friends, that is where Travis Walton got found. Abducted by UFO. That's where Travis Walton was found. 4 miles south, that is where Margaret was found. So, is it a coincidence that they're 85 miles apart? Margaret was missing shoes. She had loss of memory. She wakes up in the woods. Unknown how she traveled. Where's her luggage? That area in Flagstaff at night can get very cold. Oh yeah, very cold. Now in the summer it's a hot area, but March, April, early May, it could get cold at night. I don't know how Margaret made it. And it was unclear how long she was running around those woods. Because we know on these cases, even though she might not have been seen for 10, 12 days, that doesn't mean that she was there in those woods for all 10 days. A lot of times these people are someplace else for half the time and then in the woods half the time. It's a very complex point. Now back then they didn't have reverse hypnosis and transgressions and people trying to figure out what happened under hypnosis, etc. They didn't have that. But imagine living with that feeling, knowing that you didn't have control over yourself for over 2 weeks. What was it about Margaret? I really don't know, because I couldn't figure out her maiden name. Reeves was her married name. Interesting thing was, Margaret was only 4 feet 2 inches tall. It even said that in the article, and she only weighed 80 to 90 pounds. She was a very small lady. Did that play into it? I don't know. But those are our 2 cases for today. I wrote these up as straight missing persons cases before we walked down into the amnesia part of it. I still strongly believe that this amnesia is a big part of this missing 411 complex. Thank you for being here. I greatly appreciate each one of you. Today, I was in the post office. Lady had her arms completely filled with packages she was bringing in, and I opened up 2 doors for her and offered to take some of her packages. No, that's okay, and she came in. But the real surprise to me is I was bringing in some packages, and some man I had never known him. He said, "Sir, how many more of those packages do you have in the car? I'll help you." I don't even know who this guy is. He's an older man, probably 75, 80, good shape. I said, "No, sir, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, though." But that is the kindness that we need to express to each other. The lady walked around that post office with a big smile on the face, and I had a big smile on my face after what that man did for me. Just offering was a big deal. When you're out tomorrow, keep a smile on your face. Be nice to the service workers. We need them. And in the meantime, be safe. Remember, you're cared about here. I read all those comments you post, and I appreciate them. Remember, check and ensure that you're subscribed. Thanks a lot. Paulides out.